By the way, the inside joke is I painted a blue orange yesterday. That's
You
yeah,
actually
an orange.
painted a blue orange.
I painted an orange that happened to be blue.
Okay.
I mean, like it was like if you had
So
a
it's
blue
an
apple,
abstract.
right? You
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. If you had a blue apple, it'd be. But it's just the orange part is confusing, and that's why I did it because I'm confusing. How you doing today, Chris? Man, what's happening in your world today?
Oh man, I'm neck deep in all of this fun stuff. I'm working hard to automate everything about my company and then carry that over to my agency. And this stuff, man, you guys are giving out gold. This is
Oh,
amazing.
appreciate it, man. What's your company? And taking company is different than your agency. Those are two
Yeah,
different
yeah,
beasts.
yeah. So actually, I got the agency because of my company. I have a medical equipment company, and I
Hmm.
needed a way to organize and automate, and I ran into Go High Level, and then that turned into an agency, and so they kind of go hand in hand, and now I'm working to essentially automate every single thing about my company that I can. Agents, workflows, everything, because medical equipment is a super complex model. Should probably just turn on my camera since
I could imagine.
and if we want to
Anything with the word
scale,
medical in it sounds like, yeah, careful, danger.
there's all the stuff, all the regulation, and chasing stuff around. So yeah, consolidating all of that and taking out the or reducing the error risk is massive. So we've got this. I've just got this huge plan for full automation and agent integration and all of this stuff that you guys are teaching is helping me so much. In fact, I am inviting my friend into that Legendary Academy group so that he can start going back and watching the courses that are in there. And are
Oh,
these
amazing.
available for replay in there?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
These are as well.
Yeah, I'll start posting these as well.
Okay. Yeah, man. I don't know what your end game here is, Mario. It's diabolical because this the value that you're giving is amazing. So
Thank you. It's to help people.
Step
That is
one.
literally Michael and I's goal.
Step one, get all the underpants. Step two,
That is my
right?
favorite. That is my all-time favorite. Like, I use that all the
Step
time
part.
in motivational speaking, in like examples that I give, coaching classes that I give. Like, step one, get underpants.
But
Step three,
you got your own
profit.
spin on it. You got your own spin. There's not even a step three. Like we're not even we haven't even thought that one through. But no, it's really cool what Mario's doing, man. And I'm sure there's lots of good things happening, and he's got his ways. But I'm really interested about so the medical. You're saying you're automating everything. So you doing that all
Mhm.
yourself, or
Well, me and I've my buddy who is a statistician and has a history with machine learning and that sort of thing. But this, honestly, though, the like so much of the new stuff that's come out is it's foreign to him. I mean, he understands machine learning. He worked for a Fortune 50 company and they did their own models and all of that kind of thing. But that was all inside of that massive company, right? He's writing algorithms and all of that. Now coming out here and using these integration tools and leveraging the existing models and all of that kind of stuff is that stuff's a little newer to him, but he's catching it. It's awesome. And then we're because he has a history of project management and working with developers and all that sort of thing. Thank you. Um, Coffee drop. Um,
nice?
he's in charge of finding our outsourced devs and so that we can move this thing along more quickly. Because I'm a vibe coder. I am not a coder. I'm just using Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini and Copilot and all of the integration tools and just fumbling my way through it. And it would be so slow if I had to do it myself.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, vibe coding is just entrepreneurship, man. I mean, that's what
It's
what is
so much
entrepreneurship?
fun.
It's vibe coding a business. You don't know what the business is. We got a problem. We're gonna pull some people, some tools in, and figure it out.
Man,
So
it's
the
so much fun.
one of the thing that jumps out at me, and you know, I, I'm supposed to talk like an expert on this, but this is all there's all just theories right now. One of the things I'm thinking of is you're talking about having so you have your buddy, you got potentially developers coming in and other people you're going to be bringing in. You have this industry that's regulated. How when you're making your apps, how are you kind of like are you developing everything kind of like point solution independent? It's got to kind of all be on its own. Are they all connected? Are you just building a bunch of things and then trying to figure out how to connect them later? Like how
No,
do you approach
so
problems like that?
well, the single biggest issue that we have in my company is we have all these disparate systems, right? So we have an ERP that manages our, customer billing. We bill hospices, we build skilled nursing facilities, we bill insurances, right? So it's a very specialized platform that does that. We have another platform that we use in our backend for bookkeeping, right? So this one invoices, then we got to take all of those invoices and put it over into here, right? Then we got the white label go high level, right? And so there's a lot of duplication in there, and we've been good so far at like taking processes themselves and automating them so that there's a sequence of events that will ensure that every step of that process is taken care of. And now we're moving on to, okay, now I've done this thing and now I want to take my output and I want to push it into these areas and automate that process so that I don't have to do it manually. When a CSR gets off a call, instead of them having to go in and make the order and then all of the other things that go along with that, a back-end agent is going to take those notes and use a webhook and send all of that into the ERP. And then when the invoices come out, we're going to parse the invoice and push that into the sales journal of our bookkeeping software, and all of that sort of thing. Marketing, CFO, financials, forecasting, all of these things. We're going to tie in the existing systems, pull the data. We're using Airtable a lot right now. We might look at Azure because we live in Microsoft world, but I really love Airtable. I think that the utility of that thing is
My
just
man.
insane.
I live in their table, so you are among friends. So where I'm kind of getting at with this is so it sounds like if I'm hearing you right, you got a bunch of different systems. You had a general process that you were kind of working in, and you're saying, hey, we're building these systems and we're kind of centralizing data in. So one of do you run into any challenges with things like so first off, who's managing all that system? Is that kind of all you? Is that just kind of you have one mastermind and then you're kind of like sectioning it? Like how are you managing that?
So we're building that in. We're actually with every system that we build, we're building in little watchdogs. So we get triggered. We're trigger notifications. We're building in tests for our agent. So we've got a source of truth and it has to answer a certain way, and we try to trick it and all of that sort of thing. And we get and my partner Chris is the he's actually putting all of that stuff together and watching it, and we get signals. And then as we develop this, because we're moving into such an AI forward company, we're building our infrastructure around that as well. So right now, I am training my entire company front to back on AI. We're in module 1 right now. We just got through prompting, right? Teaching them foundational prompting, craft, right? And later we'll get into the the structured prompting and RAG and all of that kind of fun stuff. But and then there's actually 3 modules that we'll be teaching, and by module 3 they'll be able to make agents, create automations, use webhooks, all of that sort of thing. So everyone in my company will be AI fluent. They're not all going to be necessarily like modeling and building, but if they have a problem, they'll understand what's happening, and they might be able to build something for that problem that ties into our existing system because they're so in tune with what we're trying to do.
Dick, man, dude, that is friggin' phenomenal because that I feel like that feels like the right way to do things because the things that are important that I think just for people who are listening in here too, you said one really key word and that's a source of truth, and a source of truth is basically is because when we think about documents and having like SOPs, right? We have a knowledge base. Those aren't necessarily a source of truth. If I'm getting what you're putting down, Chris, is a source of truth is something that's like immutable. Like this is actually what the foundational knowledge of how we make decisions, what information is true, because an SOP can change, right?
Yes.
An SOP is a reflection. So if you have your high level software and you have a way that the calendar works, if that calendar changes or you add a new calendar, the SOP is not a source of truth. It's now at a date, right? So you can no longer make decisions off of those outdated information. Or if you do, you're going to have problems. And so what you've just identified is like, hey, we have team members and they can't make decisions unless they, one, have an AI fluency. If they don't know about webhooks and being able to use AI and they don't know how to, if they don't have that understanding of how the system kind of works, they're kind of, they got to just wait for somebody to tell them. And then secondly, they need a source of truth to make those decisions on. They need to be able to go, hey, we have a complex system. There's ERPs, the marketing stuff, the financials, booking. Like you just said, that's freaking complicated. So how is an employee on the front line going to actually make any decisions? Well, what they need is a source of truth that has an understanding of how the company works, how the system works, as well as a set of kind of like tools or processes, tactics, that would be a better word to use, how to create a chat bot, how to use like an API with the AI system to be able to implement things. And so, dude, I really love that you shared all that because that is, I think, I was going to come in and being like, well, do you not even have a source of truth? And you're like, yeah, no, we do already. But am I tracking? Are we tracking on that? Is that kind of like the direction? Is that all tracking with how you're seeing things?
Yeah, and you guys, like in the last session, the morning session, it was so illuminating because one of the issues that I have is learning to do this in teams, right? It's one thing to do, like my business is very logistical, and everything that we do, I can work with a team and say, you go over here and take care of this, and you go over here and take care of this. But now we're talking about developing things, right? And using AI tools and models to accomplish things. And organizing that and getting everybody on the same page is very different than having a physical task and getting everybody to row the same direction. So the documentation piece that you had last time was amazing. In fact, I went and signed Chris and I both up for, sorry, it's Chris and Chris. I go by CJ. The two Chris's. But I went and signed up for Notion and created project boards and templates, and I dove right into it, and it's already helping. Now I use the MCPs that I learned about from Mario to actually update that board for me so that my ADHD ass doesn't have to remember, like, okay, crap, I've got to go in here and document this. Nope, everything that we do, Claude or ChatGPT, whatever it is that I'm working in, will actually go in and update the project board with what's been done, what's next, and it helps tremendously. Chris always knows where I'm at, what I'm working on. I know what Chris is working on, what's done, what's on deck. So that class was powerful, man. It was awesome.
That's awesome.
The MCPs were both nuts, game changers.
Yeah, so I'm gonna take we're gonna slow it down here, and I'm going to make up a lesson. I've not planned anything, so I'm gonna make up a lesson literally on the spot here. First off, I'm sharing this, so I just want to take people through this because I think if you said it was powerful enough to change how you do everything, I think we need to really define this so that people can understand what they need to build to, or at least put the seeds in. So I was just taking a couple notes of just things I was hearing you say. You're saying, hey, there's like machine learning and automation, right? So like your buddy there, the other Chris squared there is coming up with stuff. We have GHL, there's booking systems, there's your ERP. Like we're just got a whole bunch of things. And you're mentioning that you have a source of truth, right? And this is something that all the information is either flowing to or from, right? So we're not going to make this pretty, but you get the idea, right? Everything is kind of relying on a source of truth, because if you don't have some central information of making decisions, how are you going to make a decision here, right? How are you going to make a decision in the financial? Because we need to know, we have to have something that kind of where the buck stops, right? And it either stops at a person, which is not scalable, and Chris spends all day long answering every single department's questions, or we have a knowledge base or source of truth of where all those decisions happen. And so I think what I want to break down, and I'd love some impacts. Like if everyone has something, raise your hand, interrupt. Doesn't matter. Like we're just going to go and figure this out together. But if we're going to have a source of truth, there's going to be a couple things that it has to do, right? Because again, it can't just be a bunch of text that AI takes from our notes and meetings and just dumps it into, right? Because if we just have random bits of information, at a certain point, those information starts conflicting. So one of the things that we need to have an actual source of truth is we have to have reliability or trust that it's true. First off, this is number one. If you're going to have a source of truth in your company, the effectiveness of it is on how reliable it is. And I always love to poop on high level in this case because I want them to improve. This is done with love. But if anyone's used high level, there's the chances, how many people that use high level regularly ever use their support? Right. It's like you got a technical problem. There's something going on in the system. What are the chances you're actually going to go on support if you really kind of know high level? It's very low. And the reason for that is because you've had one, two, or several experiences where the person on the other end doesn't know as much as you about the platform, or they tell you something that's wrong. The documentation, same thing. If the documentation is out of date, even just like 5%, right? It doesn't take much. It only takes 1 or 2 times that you've wasted an hour going to the documentation and then trying to follow it and realize it doesn't work. That as soon as that reliability and trust is gone, you no longer have a source of truth. You have a document again, right? Cool. So that's the first thing that I'm looking for, because if we can't rely on it, it's not true there. So what that means is that we have to have a process. We're gonna have to break this thing down. Oh man, we got arrows all over the place. We have to have a decision on we need a decision process on what is true. Cool. It's not enough to have information and say it's got to be reliable. We have to have some way of knowing what information we put in our source of truth. How do we know, how do we decide what is accurate and what's up to date there? Chris, I'm going to jump back into you on that. Is on your Airtable, the source of truth, first off, the reliability, any thoughts on that? And then, how do you kind of decide what to put into your kind of source of truth?
Well, I mean, and it just depends on the table, right? Because we've got several. Like right now, I'm building a product. I've got a product table that is tied into our Business Central. So it's actually pulling in so much. It's pulling information from several places, like what's our overhead burden ratio, what's our competitor pricing, all of these things, all the dimensions, and we're pulling that from the manufacturer's information. So it's going to be the most up to date because of the fact that we're building in the automations to check on that regularly, like what's changed.
Perfect.
And then
so that
goes to somebody.
If I could just stop you.
Is this right? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, just stop right there. So the first thing you're saying is you're pulling in up-to-date information. This is a really important thing, right? Of saying, okay, because that's where a lot of information systems, where they kind of die, is that we pull it in once and then we have the meeting, we have the AI transcribe it, we have it document some things, create some cool looking PowerPoints and all kinds of other things. But then that information has to be challenged readily. So when we're saying pulling in up-to-date information, the second thing you also said too is that information is approved. There's an approval or a challenge. I'll call it a challenge. Is challenged. One thing that I do and I'm just going to pull in my documentation from high level is that I have a very, very very, very strict rule when I'm building a team for managing high level accounts is that you have to have a document as you go process. And the reason why you have to have that is because you have multiple people working on things that don't have a chance to, they're not going to always have the chance to work one-on-one. Like their schedules are different countries, they work at different times. And it's the only other way to have people work together is if they literally are working together constantly, which is not practical all the time. You want people to independently do things. So if you document as you go as a practice, you touch something in the account, you document it. What that's doing is you're pulling in information and you're giving a chance for information in that to be challenged, right? Hey, I opened up this workflow that you worked on there yesterday, and I'm seeing something different, right? So if information is only true, it's only true up to the point the last time that you challenged it, right? What worked today only works today because we figured it out today. But then tomorrow, at some point in the future, it's going to stop being true, right? Situations change. So, sorry, Chris, there. This is just that. This is super fascinating there. So go on.
Yeah. So we have a challenge, and then so for example, even when we make an assumption that we've parsed this invoice and now this data needs to be put into the bookkeeping software, right? Before that happens, we've got to send that to the human in the loop and say, is this correct? Does this look good? Before I post it, is this okay? Right? Same thing with invoices and anything else. We send it to a human to make sure and evaluate that it meets the parameters and everything is good, and then it will go ahead and automatically push it in. So we're still keeping the human in the loop aspect. We're still making sure that there's oversight in it for the areas that need to be. I mean, there are some things obviously where it's a low risk automation, and okay, if something weird goes wrong, that's okay, just do it. But for anything that's going to be important and have an impact later, we make sure that we have a human in the loop.
Yeah, and accountability is the next one, right? Because like you're talking AI systems. So you could imagine a world where we have a source of truth. If we have a source of truth, we could just give the AI, why don't we just give the AI, hey, AI, here's all the information of how our company goes. Let's just let you go and make some things, right? So what's the problem with that? The problem is accountability. So at a certain point, there's got to be some accountability where a human, as you said, in the loop in there. So for me, a lot of people saying, well, hey, Mike, I'm just going to get the AI to do all my documentation. It's like, cool, that'll give you an SOP, but it's going to be missing the important part of who's accountable to knowing how the system works and can make the call, right? The AI can come up with all the decisions. It could come up with the plans. It could even build the things, but no one's going to, no one's going to hold that AI accountable for those decisions. They're going to hold the person who put that AI in place, right? And so the accountability does two things. It does one, what we usually think with accountability, it is the person that gets blamed, is responsible for it. But the second layer is that accountability is that it's kind of goes in with the challenge, right? It's like at a certain point, there's got to be a layer of where somebody can verify things, right? It kind of keeps things anchored, and it also keeps the people who make the decisions anchored with reality, right? Because if you're going to be accountable to something, you're going to be making sure that data is true. And if that data isn't true anymore, right, you need to be part of that system. Otherwise, it can very quickly spiral. So that's really freaking cool. Another area that I've been thinking about with sources of truth is having a decision on what to keep. So in your kind of like source of truth model, like, do you just throw everything into it? Do you have like, what information is like, how do you prevent yourself from getting into information overload? Or is that fine? Do you find that works really well? Like what goes into a source of truth for you?
So we've designed the database for the source of truth to hold the information that's important. So we've told it like this is what we want to keep as we go through, and there's because there is so much information, right? We can give it a product, and instead of us entering the products into everything, we're entering it into one place, and then that pushes an Airtable, and then it goes out from there. But it knows like this is what you need to look for. So we have agents that go out and we give it the basic information, and then it's going to use its MCPs and webhooks and the different things that we have created to go out and pull all of the relative information and then come back and say, is this all right? Is this what you're looking for?
Cool.
But it's all
So
fine.
let's
We don't
slow
get
that.
everything. We've got a database that's structured. We want these things.
Gotcha. So there's a couple things we got to pull out there that are nuggets there. So you say we tell it kind of what we're looking for. What does that kind of look like? Is that just you structured the data and you said, okay, AI, go after this? Is it more general things? Here's access to a system. Like, uh, what
No,
do
we
you
have
tell
very
it kind of
specific.
in the beginning?
So we like in my database we've got columns for everything, right? What's the SKU? What's the model number? Who's the manufacturer? What's their website? What are the specifications of this product? What's the weight capacity? What's the contraindications? All of the different things that because this also feeds the our CSR team. If they have a question, they go in here and go, oh, what's the billing number for this piece, or what's the Medicare reimbursement policy for this piece, or whatever it is. So we have columns that are specifically designed to pull that information. Does that answer the question?
It's more of how did you decide what information to gather in the first place is kind of that's
Oh,
actually a better
Claude.
way to decision.
Claude's how I made that decision. So and that's not a total lie. I mean, I using Claude as a project partner is amazing, right? Because I tell it essentially what it is that I'm trying to accomplish with my database and my source of truth, and then we just go back and forth with a series of questions to determine like, is this important? Yes or no. Is this important? Yes or no. And based on what it is that I'm trying to feed, because that's really what it comes down to, right? Like, what am I going to do with this information once I have it? If I'm not going to send it somewhere, I don't need it, right? But if it's something that my CSRs are going to need as an FAQ, or that my sales team is going to need, or that we can feed another system, then that's what we want to keep. And so that's how we went through that process.
Beautiful, dude. You're just lighting up all my brains here. So you've you are really hard on the right track here. So one of the things that I've noticed is that, and it's really important that you recognize how good of a decision that is that you didn't just go to Claude. I think that's underselling what you've done. Is you had to first make a decision of being clear on what you're trying to accomplish, right? Because one of the things that can very easily happen with AI, I don't know if you've noticed, but it likes to kind of like it fills in the gaps or it prioritizes things. If you don't give it a specific priority of what you're trying to accomplish and you just give it information of different things you're doing, it might guess that you're trying to do A when really what you're trying to do is B. What our company is really about is not about maximizing profits, blah, blah, blah. What we're actually trying to do is to change, like achieve X maybe mission or goal, right? That the technical bits might miss. So I think it's really important, and this is even all under the source of truth. We're talking about source of truth still, is that to make decisions on what's worth keeping and what information to keep in the first place, you have to be clear on what you're actually trying to do. Because if you don't know what you're trying to do, the AI is going to make those decisions for you, right? It's going to take you in a place that you're not in control of. And what I really if you're already really clear on what you're trying to do and how the systems works, that's one thing. But what I'm a big advocate for people who are just getting started is that it's really powerful to go through a mapping process and write down all the things. Because if we go back up here, what you just said is that we have financial systems, we have booking, ERP. I think we had CS. You said your CSR reps. I mean, R is
We
probably
have
reps, but
drivers, we
whatever.
have warehouse, yeah, I
But
mean, there's just so many, yeah.
so every one of these little boxes is another system, another almost like a whole business, right? And each one of these things has needs. So if we go into the CSR reps, what are we trying to do, right? We're trying to answer questions for sales or customers. And I'm going to make stuff up that won't be right for your company, but we're going to be general here, right? What also CS reps are trying to do? What they're trying to, they're collecting feedback, maybe collecting feedback on products, to help kind of improve. Right. So we're going to get a list of other things too. Like, let's say instead of machine learning and automation, we'll just say we have our product management systems over here or something like that. Well, in the product management systems, what are we trying to get done over there? We're trying to create new products, or we're trying to improve new products, right? Improve products, which is another way of saying getting feedback. And this is where I think you might see me try to get to. When you start to understand what all these different systems are doing, you can say, hey, we need to improve our products. Well, how are we doing that? Well, we need feedback, which means we have to have we have to have some other part of our system needs to be collecting that feedback. So we have the CSR reps, one of their roles is to collect feedback. If I was to make an AI to talk to our customers, now I have the understanding that we're not just trying to sell people stuff here. What we're also trying to do is we're trying to get feedback on how people are using these types of products. What problems are they having that they might need, et cetera, right? If you don't have this explicitly stated somewhere and you ask an AI to do stuff, well, you're kind of leaving it up in the air of whatever you're thinking in the moment. You're not understanding how the whole system works. You might prioritize sales in the CSR rep, but if you actually look at your whole system, you might go, you know what? Our products and getting that feedback is a value driver for us. It's what makes us different than the other companies. It's really important to get that feedback in. So taking that back in, so when we're talking about what information do we want to keep, it's not just enough to kind of know what is the overall financial goal, the goal to sell products to people. What we're trying to do is what we're trying to accomplish in all of our different systems. We need to know, and to know that, we also have to understand how those systems work. If you don't understand the reality of a day-to-day life in a CSR team, right? You got a team of people that are human beings, live people, or AIs doing it, right? If you don't know the realities of how their job is, how are you going to be able to connect your product? We need feedback. Give us feedback. Well, there's some realities that we have to deal with here, right? But if you have all those things explained, you can go to Claude and saying, hey, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. Here's how our current system is actually working. What information do we need to be able to get everybody aligned on things, right? So first off, Chris, did I jump in too far on that? Is that kind of tracking how you're doing? It's like,
yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really, really helps me out is at the very beginning of every one of these projects, I start a build document, right? And so
Yep,
I
my
start to
man.
create a full build document. This is what's going to happen. These are the priorities, blah, 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 all of that stuff. And then I'll audit it, right? So for this particular one, it's a massive project. I mean, we're going to do 107 agents, 400 workflows. It's huge, right? And so I had Claude, and it says, "Yeah, this is rock solid. This is great." And I said, "Okay, we'll see." So I took it to Gemini. And I said, "Okay, yeah, right." So I said, "All right, Gemini, look, I want you to audit this from the viewpoint of regulatory bodies, customers, of the CSR team, of all the stakeholders in this." And it came back and it said, "Your plan sucks, and here's a whole bunch of holes." So then I take it back to Claude and I say, "All right, Claude, this is what Gemini said." And he's like, "Holy crap, you know what? That's right. And also, we didn't think about this." And then I'll take it to ChatGPT, and I do that until all three systems say, "Yeah, this is realistic. This is technically feasible. This is, based on your resources, based on your platform, based on your systems, based on your goals. This is realistic." And then that build document becomes the Bible for it. I mean, it might change,
Wonderful.
of course, right? But
100%. And one thing you said earlier too, that's poignant here, right? There's certain decisions where if you're aware that the decision is going to have a low impact, you can make the decision and get the information. Oh, that was the wrong decision. Now we know, let's improve, right? But then there's certain decisions like what we're talking about here. This is fundamental. How do we structure our company decisions, right? But I just wanted to say here is that we create a plan. So what you said is if we create a map and we're going to create a plan via, we'll just say Claude. And then you said something like we're going to challenge the plan with Gemini. So what's important to understand here is when we're talking about source of truths, or is that the information that we're creating, first off, the information is that we have to have a map of what we're doing, what we're trying to accomplish, right? What is the types of information that exist kind of there? Then we're having a plan, but part of that decision matrix is also it has to get challenged, right? Like I love it, right? You just said it there. We have that challenge. So we're going to put it through Gemini, or when we say we're going to challenge with Gemini, you're not just saying, hey, Gemini, tear this apart. You're probably asking it. You probably have a set of criteria that you are using to evaluate the plan, right? So you're not just saying, hey, Gemini, tear this idea apart, which maybe you are, I'm not sure, but you're probably asking it, here's how we evaluate our plans. Is this plan meeting that criteria? Yes or no? Before we document, before we solidify into our source of truth that this is how this is our plan of attack on how our system is built and how it functions and what information is important to keep, what we're going to do is we're going to have a set of criteria of what that plan is trying to do. And then if it passes, then it's going into, where is it? Source of truth. Then it's kind of going in there. And one other thing that go on.
Sorry,
jump in.
This has saved me well, I wasted, I don't even know how many hundreds of hours working on a plan to get to a point where I'm just troubleshooting. And it's like, why isn't this working? Can you please check and see if this is technically viable? It's like, oh, my bad, which that phrase irritates me on a level that I can't even explain. Oh, my bad, from an AI. But, and I'm like, okay, well, why did we stay on this path? And this checks and balances, this audit system has saved me so much trouble just verifying that this plan actually has merit, that it is doable, it's technically feasible, it's resource.
Well, that's the same way that I use. That's the same reason that I use ChatGPT for, like, when I build, like, your scoping documents that you're building or your project documents that you're building are very similar to like my class that I run on PRD's product requirements documents.
That was a massive help also.
One of the things that I do is I human speak using either typing or whisper flow about 3 to 6 pages of documentation that's just me talking, blabbering, story, format. And then I put that in ChatGPT and ask it to ask me questions. I take that and put it in Claude and have it ask me questions or answer the questions. And I basically play the AIs off of each other. And ultimately I use Manus to actually craft the documents themselves. And then I put that back into ChatGPT for validation that it's on point with my original goals. So it's one of those, like, the sanity checks that you have using multiple AIs is very helpful.
That question routine that you taught, and I think it was your second class. Yeah, it was the second class of the series. Man, it was gold. That's now that is part of what I do every time now, no matter what.
So another fundamental principle that I've been working with is a lot of this planning starts to sound at a certain point like planning to plan to plan to plan. And one of the things, especially when it comes to documenting and information, right, is talking about sources of truth. And there's a tendency for it to get into the realm of like, okay, we got to have a discussion about every single time we're going to update our things. And one way that you can get around this is through documentation. If one of the things you can do, the reason why things go off in a long way is when you don't have a way to go back to a previous version, right? If you get an idea in your head on Monday and then you start working on it, and then you develop the idea, and then you go on a couple more tangents, and you come up with another idea that kind of latches onto it. By the time the next Monday rolls around and you start showing people that, all the things that you've kind of done, it can sometimes be really difficult because, okay, yeah, it was great to take all those actions, but it's kind of hard to go back. We either have to go back to the very beginning of the project and start over, but we can't go back into the middle too, because there's just this black hole where things happened. So one of the things that's really important is if you have a simple decision-making frame like this, if you're saying, hey, for every decision I'm going to make when I'm creating things or changing something in my department, if we have this process of we create maps, we create a plan, and can we challenge things, if you document these things as you go on them, right? You don't have to get permission if you document things. And the reason is that if you go map out your idea, create a plan, you have a process for challenging it, and then you go and build it. When you look at the final product of the build, you can go back and say, well, what was the original plan? What was the problem you're trying to solve? What was how did you, what was the original way that you said, hey, this is how you're doing it? What decisions did you make? What was the criteria that you made, that you made your decisions on? Now we can have a productive conversation about the end result. And instead, because we're just looking, we can retroactively look at the decisions you made. It's not a all or nothing, like this project passes or it fails. We're going with this or we're not going with this. We can now go and saying, well, hey, how did you come to these conclusions? What are some decisions that we can change? We don't have to go into, hey, your code sucks here, we don't like this thing. We can go into the principles of how you're kind of building out your documentation or your system. And that's kind of one of the things that I've been seeing a lot of, is that if you document, you can build, because you have a paper trail, you've documented the decisions that you made, because the work is the work. The AI is going to go and make 1,000 lines of code, 1,000 pages. But if you understand the core decisions, that, the kind of the mental models or the fundamental structures of how things need to get done, you can go back and saying, I like the idea of this. Let's just let the AI iterate on that stuff. Let's take the good parts of it instead of throwing it out because the outcome the outcome didn't work. So having a decision tree and having a simple way to write these things down as you go, so people can just build because they know what the decision process is, and they can retroactively go back and undo or modify things without it being kind of an all or nothing thing. Do you have anything like that there, Chris? Do you guys have like a process for how you guys are you going to be teaching that to like the CSRs? Like, hey, if you want to go and mail the chatbot, this is how you do it, kind of thing, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of systems overthinking and inputs, process, outputs, feedback, and I think that yes, the documenting like the entire process of how you came to the your end result of what you want to accomplish has really helped to make sure that everybody else can understand and they can ask better questions as well. So when I share my build documents with them and they can see the process of what we're trying to do and how everything fits, we've got maps, we've got they can ask better questions, and I think they get a better visual. And plus, that has really helped them to come to me with challenges of their own. Like, hey, I see that you put this thing in there, but that's not really what we're looking for. That's not helping us out. We would much rather have this.
Yeah, having an understanding of the constraints, right? If you understand the constraints, it's a lot. If you can tell people how you want to do things, or you can tell them the underlying principle of why you do things the way you do. Instead of telling people, hey, this is how everything needs to be done, you could say, hey, everyone, here's the constraints that we're working with, right? We're trying to accomplish this goal, make some sales, do a thing, do a task. And these are the different constraints you're working under. GDPR, medical, blah, blah, blah. We have a source of truth. We need to be able to make sure that we're, like, here's the information. We have to be able to work with the other departments. It's got to be something that we can actually, train maybe entry level positions in, because that's going to be the people that are going to be implementing this. If you have those constraints, and you have them kind of written down, you don't actually have to spend as much time like kind of like evaluating everything and coming up with like detailed plans. You can just go ask, can go to the challenge saying, hey, have the AI knows all the constraints, have it challenge things there. Like, instead of having to be humans and every single time making every single decision in your company, if you have how you make decisions done, it's not just something stuck in your head. It's like, oh, I do it because I feel like it, or, it's like you have a reason for doing it. Well, you could document and offload that to AI more. Um, and that's how you kind of eliminate a lot of those bottlenecks in there. Oh, so I think that's pretty cool. What else? Is there any other things on source of truth that you've kind of encountered, doing things with the Airtable, or how about you, Mr. Mario? What's coming to your mind through all this here?
I love it. I mean, this is exactly what I do for all of like that's what I've started doing for all of my documentation. Um, it's getting more I'm getting more streamlined, more advanced, more um really more sticky in my process. And I think that that's helping, but I love what, Chris is doing with bouncing AIs off of each other. I love, your plan of the source of truth ultimately having, really, I think where my head goes is needing a better system for delivering those SOPs to CSRs and people in the company, a better system for writing the SOPs. So that part still sounds largely manual. And I think that with feeding AI the right inputs and code base, some of that can be automated. Um, so coming up with a workflow for that would be an interesting endeavor. On a side note, I just got my AI officially training, which is both scary and cool at the same time. So I'm super excited about that.
What are you training on?
You have to explain. What do you mean? Yeah, what do you mean on the training there? Because it sounds like a big thing for you, but it sounds like it should just be a small thing. So what's the big part about that for you?
It's really hard to actually get AIs to train properly or fine tune properly. In that it's not just like essentially what you're doing is you're taking an open source model like GPT, OSS, or Llama or Mixtral or something like that. And normally I train small models on documentation data sets. And this time, in order to achieve higher fidelity of conversation, you want a larger model, which sounds ironic because that's trained on more parameters. But what I'm doing is I'm taking all of my, which is very saddening to think that my entire 20 something years of conversation history outside of spoken word is only 44 megabytes in size. But I'm taking my entire conversation history of 20 something years on Facebook and iMessage and email and everything else. And I've distilled part of the challenge is you have to distill the data down into a consistent format. And then once you get a consistent format, you have a bunch of tests you have to run before you go the big shebang, because the big shebang is very expensive. But essentially, when I'm done, like I'm running a smoke test right now, which will be a lightly trained version of the model on my content preferences and my responses. So
Mhm.
you ingest both halves of the conversation, so the AI understands if Pachito's talking to me, how would I respond to Pachito's query, right? And so I can say, hey, I'm talking to Michael Pachito and he's being an asshole. How do I respond back
Common.
to it? And the AI will actually respond like, or should, in theory, by the time I'm done, respond in something that is very close to what I would say. But it's my cumulative personality over 20 years.
What's coming in my mind on that, from talking about like a larger model has more parameters, right? I I think there's this there's kind of like two major applications. There's one where it's like what you're trying to do is you're trying to keep a very open-ended kind of system. That's a very open-ended way of approaching a problem, right? It's saying like, hey, I'm not going to know how Mario, like you can't make a map, a finite map of how do you actually interact with people, because as you just said, well, how you talk to, how do you talk to the a retail worker is different than how do you talk to me, Pachito. But it's even more than that. How do you talk to me when we're joking around versus when we're working
Right.
on projects? When we have conflict or when we have, like differences of opinion, how do you do that with, how do you resolve conflict with me versus how do you resolve conflict with like a telemarketer, right?
Right.
There's differences in things, and that's not, you can't map those out. So that's where model training, I think, is really, really powerful in that. And that comes into when we're talking businesses, right? It's trying to, and then the other end of that is a completely programming system. It's closed. It's been optimized. We know exactly, like, we're trying to optimize and eliminate everything that we can because we're maximizing for this one metric or this one tiny metric. But business is in the middle of those. Your source of truth and what information are you giving it? Because if you give, here's one thing that's interesting: you give it your entire 20 years on Facebook. How you talk to people 20 years ago is probably different than now. So it's like it
Yeah.
gets. So knowing what information to put into your system when you have a more open-ended versus a more closed way, right? Like there's different criteria and weightings, and you have to kind of know that of what you're trying to accomplish there. Anyway,
Well,
I don't know if
that's
that's
what
useful for
the
people,
temporal
but
that's what temporal weighting
yeah.
it factors in timestamps and the way that it maps in the neural network or in the neural model. Um, it's swayed based on most recent conversations
Mm-hmm.
and then regresses backwards, or regresses into, like, if it needs to find knowledge that it can't find, it will go back in time and try and find it there, when it makes the correlations and the predictions. But ultimately, my goal is to create a system where, like, it's a proof of concept and more
Yeah.
just a fun hobby project. But the idea is that I could take all of this information, train a model, host it on Replicate, and then when I want a social post, I just say, write me a social post about this, and augment it with some sort of, recent news or data, and then it will actually write it in almost pitch perfect Mario speak, for lack of better words.
Or rather, it might not even be more perfect than how it won't it even sorry, let me get this thought out. It might not be more perfect than another way of doing AI things, but what it will be is it'll be able to handle more unknowns than more traditional ways, right? Because
Truth, yes.
you could take a ChatGPT thing and just give it you could make a very simple chatbot that gives it very specific rules, and it will probably do a pretty good job of getting you of that. My guess is that it might this temporal or this more bigger machine learning way of approaching the problem. It might not necessarily get you better on an individual post level, but it'll be way more flexible to, as you said, like on the fly, right?
Right.
When you kind of are in a new topic that you've never talked about before, it'll have that, it'll be able to make those connections, whereas a more prompt centric closed system wouldn't. It wouldn't be able to
Well,
handle. It's like,
well, it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
when you put in prompt system rules and things like that, and you create too many guardrails, AI starts to hallucinate
yes,
because you're no matter how you slice it, you can't say y'all sometimes, but don't say y'all every time. Sometimes say you all if you're being formal or like
yeah.
uh not defamatory, but like argumentative. Use, certain lingo versus other times.
Yeah,
Like whereas
trolling
this,
people. How do you know? Like some people can
right.
troll people in a nice way, and then other people do it in a mean way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's it. So that's why it's understanding those. You have to get those underlying principles. But yeah, those the rules just yeah. That's why it's now I understand why this is such a cool thing for you because yeah, this is definitely taking kind
Well,
of your
so
AI game to another level.
imagine a high level gave me access to their entire resolved or HL Pro Tools or Extendly gave me access to their entire resolved support ticket, and I standardized that data set and put that data set through a machine learning algorithm instead of using retrieval augmented generation, which relies on semantic search. This innately fundamentally understands the answers to the questions the right way, and it can run the predictions a lot more effectively versus using and faster than using retrieval augmented generation. So like
It's yeah.
you give me your Airtable and I standardize that data. Now you need like 1,000 Airtables, 1,000 Airtable bases of similar quality and depth to standardize, but then you train the machine learning on that, and it now understands so much more than just Michael's basic process. Now it understands Michael's thought process.
Yeah, what I wanted to write down, and I don't know if this will be useful for people, but it's when we're thinking about um, what is it, the decision of what information is important to have and what we're trying to accomplish. Knowing what information you need is going to be different on that because if you know what all of the it's like no the unknown unknowns, known unknowns, right? What do you know and what do you not know you don't know? If you have a lot of unknowns in your process, right? We don't actually know what type of customers we have. We don't know how our CSR teams go. We don't know what kind of products or what kind of information is going to be pulled in, what kind of questions we're going to be fielding. If you don't have a lot of those, you're going to need a much more powerful AI system. You're going to need a lot that kind of goes into it. So it's not just what are accomplished and understanding, it's what unknowns do we need the AI to solve for? If there's a lot of unknowns in your system, you're going to need a lot of data. You just said it, right? You need a lot of data, you need
Right.
a lot of training, and you need a lot of processing power. If there's not a lot of unknowns, and this is why the mapping is really important because while you map, if you don't know what you don't, if you map through a process, you're going to be able to identify if you actually have unknowns on where they are. And if there's not a lot of unknowns, well, great. You know what? You can run a really simple system. So the counter to that, I think, is my documentation system for high level. Because what I've done is I've been an account manager, I've been a tech person, I've built snapshots, I've run an agency, I know what's needed to sell things, to build things, to update things. There's very little unknowns in managing a high level business that's left for me. There's details like email and DNS and stuff like that. But like when it comes to managing the actual structure of the work, I pretty much there's almost no unknowns. And I've identified the 5 core pieces of information that if you keep these five fields in a spreadsheet up to date, you have all of the information to be able to solve any business problem in scaling your high level business. But that's assuming you are doing a high level business, right? That's assuming that you are managing a snapshot or you're managing a single account or client account that is going to be updated, that's going to require versions, which is going to require tech support and multiple people working on it. But as soon as you start throwing that into, well, we have other things going on and we're only using high level for some things, but it's actually the main system is this other app. Well, now you're going to need a little bit more of a complex system. Now you're going to need more data. So it's really important when you're building your vibe coding, snapshot building, automationing, whatever you're doing is you have to manage the unknowns. And
Right.
the more unknowns you have, the more of the less reliant you're going to be able to use AI unless you're going to go all in on it and you have a machine learning person on hand and all that. But if there's not many unknowns, that's telling you, guys, we should be able to like streamline things. We should be able to get down where AI does literally everything, right? We can get things because there's no unknowns left. All we got to do is document the system properly. And now AI can take that part over and we can do other things, right? But anyhow, that's freaking cool, man. That's
Yeah.
it. Well, we are at the top of the hour, man. Does anyone got any other questions or anything that they want to? Yeah, Chris, nice meeting you, my dude. If he's already gone. Yeah, Mario, you want to finish us off, to send us off there?
Yeah, well, thank you everyone who jumped on today. I appreciate all of you. Thank you, Michael, for sure, for being my lovely co-host and partner in crime today. I appreciate you being one of our esteemed coaching team members. Without further ado, though, I will let everyone get back to their day and make sure and stop by office hours tonight at 5 p.m. And then tomorrow at 6 p.m., we'll be starting to cover some more advanced topics as we kind of go through our sine wave that we talked about in different or step wave that we talked about in different complexities. So looking forward to seeing everyone, and we will talk soon.